Hey, today we're debating secular versus theistic morality. Are they equally objective? And we're starting right now. So, everybody, very happy to have you here for this very interesting debate, a new topic that we haven't really done before. We've done it in like varieties, but I think the way that it's framed tonight is unique. It's framed ideally this way. So, with that, very excited to introduce our debaters. By the way, right away, got to mention it. Their links are down in the description, so you can check out their content. And with that, hey, let's say you're like, oh man, I already know I disagree with this guy. Well, what's the worst that can happen if you go and you read up and you say, hey, well, at least I know that I got the words straight from the horse's mouth. You didn't get a summary, which, don't get me wrong, summaries aren't always straw men, but sometimes they're just not as robust or strong because the summary doesn't have all that you could say supporting details. And so, long story short, you can hear their case in its strongest form by clicking on their link for their channel. And so we are now going to introduce each of our speakers. So we're glad to have them here. And first, just letting you know, we're going to have an open dialogue format. I think most people like that, which is I'm glad most debaters wanted that as well. And by open dialogue, I just mean people are able to, the debaters are able to engage each other back and forth throughout the discussion. So, introducing Pastor Ramon. We're very glad to have you here. If you want to just share what you've been up to at your channel or what you've been reading about recently, we're excited to hear about that, so the floor is yours.
No, so basically we're the true church and we're giving people the opportunity to learn how to follow Christ the right way. Our website is the truebodyofchristrestored.com. It's an online church where people can access the lessons and things like that. And I share these discussions like this on YouTube so that people can see it and get an idea what the church is actually about.
Yeah, you bet. Well, glad you're here. And also we have, goes by the alias Condor Man. And we're very, like as I said, both linked down in the description. You can check them out. And so Joseph or Joe, if you want to explain what you've been up to at your channel, we're glad to have you here.
Yeah, so this actually is my first video in the whole, atheist versus theist debate community. So I really have nothing on my channel. There's no reason anyone needs to visit it. Hopefully this is going to be a start to something. Overall, I see the whole discussion as really pure entertainment for me. I'm not trying to convince anybody that I'm right. I'm just trying to get better at honing my debate skills. And I feel like over the years of thinking about this stuff, I've just gotten better at making myself clear. And this is kind of a trial by fire. I hope I can make myself clear during this discussion.
You got it. Well, we're glad you're here. I appreciate your humility. And with that, we're just going to let the conversation get rolling. So prior to the debate, Pastor Ramon said he'd defer to Joseph in starting the conversation. And so I'm just going to start the clock at maybe about 45, 50 minutes and let the speakers go. And then if there's an issue they need to resolve and need just a few more minutes or something, we can push it out. So it's flexible there. And we will be taking your questions for the Q&A through the entire debate. If you just shoot at moderndaydebate into the comments and say, this is a question for the atheist or the theist or for Joe or for Ramon, then we'll know who it's for and you can state your question and it'll be added to the list. So with that, gentlemen, the floor is yours. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, James. First, let me say I really appreciate people knowing what Condor Man is in the comments. No one that I speak to around my life knows what that movie is, and it was really meaningful to me as a child and growing up. So good on you, anyone that knows what Condor Man is. So I don't have anything written down. I don't have an intro, so it can pretty much be short. The point that I'm going to try to make throughout this discussion, the main point, is that the same things that one would call objective in a system of theistic morality, one could also make about a secular system, one that's based on well-being or freedom of choice, things like that. So being able to define something any which way doesn't actually influence what is objective and what isn't objective or what's subjective. Like if you have a ruler, obviously the length of the ruler is completely arbitrary, totally subjective. It's according to the overall consensus. The thing that makes measuring with it objective is the fact that its length is an objective fact. The comparison can be made objectively. One can say, yes, that is 12 inches objectively, even though the number is completely arbitrary. And the same works for language. If one were to say that morality means a system in which you compare actions against the nature of God's will, those natures being consistent with God's will being called moral, and those inconsistent being called immoral, the thing that makes that objective would be God actually exists, and this is all tentative. I'm willing to accept all these claims just for the sake of the argument, even though I'm an atheist. But God exists, and he has a will, and actions can or might not be consistent with that nature. And doing that comparison is the objective aspect that I believe theistics are calling the objective nature of it. And the same thing can go for secular morality, or pretty much, there's a bunch of different moralities. And it really depends what you mean by moral with regard to what is objective and what is subjective. So if I say that which is moral is that which is consistent with achieving human well-being, and human well-being factually exists, and things objectively can be consistent with human well-being, and things can be inconsistent with it, that would be an objective comparison, in the same way that the ruler, comparing an action to God's will or comparing a length of something to a ruler would be objective. So if you think that what I'm describing isn't objective, it's rather subjective, I'm fine with that. I'm not making the case necessarily that my views on secular morality are objective, just that my views on secular morality are equally objective or subjective as the theistic morality.
Gotcha. Pastor Ramon?
Okay, so before I start, how long do I have for this?
This, well, this is like just kind of open discussion. So, like open dialogue, civil discourse, and you guys are just kind of free. You got the freedom to range on your own.
Oh, okay, I was just making sure because I thought you said something about time. All right, so basically the way that it works is I'm not arguing for any other religion other than Christianity. The reason why Christianity is objective and morality is objective in Christianity is because God is eternal and he sets the standards for everything. So the problem with the secular version is nothing is objective in the secular version. Since you're born disconnected from God and you're born using your own corrupt mind, your corrupt surroundings, and Satan to figure out life, everything you do in your life in a secular world is based off a generalized guess. So in no way will you ever come to an objective reality, because every single person is using their own mind to come up with their own version of what true is. But with religion or with Christianity, you actually have a starting point, which is God, which will always direct you in the way that you're supposed to go. Now, I know a lot of people are going to point to the fact that, oh, what about the so many religions that we have, or how many versions of Christianity that we have? Well, that's not real Christianity. The church was corrupted over 1,800 years ago by the Catholic Church. And from that point on, the true church hasn't been around. So people have just been figuring things out as they went along and doing things wrong completely until now, where the church is actually being restored. So I could go into the great detail of how that happened, but that'll take about 5 minutes, and I don't want to take away from the conversation. But overall, there's only one version of Christianity, and there's only one version of morality, and that's from God. So you have to get that connection with God, learn how to do things the right way, and then you're actually able to learn what objective morality really is. But in a secular world, you have no chance at all.
So let's just make sure we're on the same page, because I don't want to argue epistemology. Can we first agree that we can objectively say whether or not an object is 12 inches? Like, we just...
Well, are you saying from a secular perspective or from a Christian perspective?
Just in general, so we can have a discussion about morality and not epistemology. Like, can we just say, we know true things. Honestly, I could even say, like, I'm willing to accept for the sake of the discussion that God exists and he is the reason how we could know things for certain.
Yeah, but that's not, in a secular world, that's not true.
Well, so I'm not talking about a secular.
You can't argue from my worldview.
Well, see that's the thing. I'm talking about secular morality and not secular epistemology. I could be a theist. I could be a Christian just like you and think that morality can be objective. Secular.
No, you can't, because a person here and a person in Russia have a completely different idea of morality. There's people that think things aren't 12 inches in the world. Those people exist. Just because you live in Western society where people agree with that, that's not true. There are people in the world that don't believe that 12 inches are 12 inches.
Okay. So you're not allowing me to say that we can objectively say that an object is or isn't 12 inches. I can't say that.
Are you arguing for every single secular person in the world? If you are, then no, you can't say that. That's not your position.
I don't know. I'm sorry, I just don't understand what arguing for every.
Are there people in the world that don't believe 12 inches are 12 inches?
I wouldn't know what that meant.
What do you mean?
12 inches is 12, like.
Are there people in the world that don't know what inches are? Are there people in the world that wouldn't agree with you that 12 inches were 12 inches?
I don't know.
There you go. So your standard, you've already lost because you don't know the reality of other people.
Okay, so to be clear, we're not talking about morality right now. We're just talking about epistemology. Can one know things in general, right?
In your secular worldview, you can't know anything because it's all based on your perspective. You can make your perspective whatever you want it to be in a secular worldview. I can say that down is up in a secular worldview because there is no right. I can say pedophilia is right. I can say whatever I want is right because there is no starting point. You have nothing that tells you right or wrong. It's all based on what you want to believe. You have no real position. That's the problem with what you're doing. You don't really have a position. I have a position because it's based on God. You don't actually have a position.
Okay. For the sake of the argument, I'm a theist. I believe that Jesus exists and he died for our sins and he's the Son of God.
Okay.
He is a way in which we could, he gives us a foundation for knowledge. He lets us be able to know things. You know, I'm just going to accept this at, on the face of it. This is all factually true. And I also think that secular morality is equally objective.
Yeah, see, right there. The number one thing that God told man not to do was to use their own, not to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So what you think doesn't matter to God. Once you add it, what you think, you're no longer at that objective position. You're at what you think. And the same way you think this, millions of other people think something else.
So it seems like you're saying that no matter what, I am wrong because I don't share your worldview.
No, okay. Are there people if you're arguing from a secular worldview, are there people in the world that think different than you that aren't religious?
Yes.
There you go.
Okay. I think them thinking differently than me doesn't make my system any more objective or subjective.
Yes, it does. It can't be objective unless you all get to the same conclusion.
Okay, so this is exactly my main.
The only reason math is considered objective worldwide is because most people get the same. Most people think 1 + 1 is 2. But there are people in the world that haven't been educated ever that don't understand that 1 + 1 is 2. We just live in a society where we think everyone thinks the way that we do, but they don't. In real life, there's people that have never been taught math a day in their life, and they're still existing, and they have no clue that 1 + 1 is 2, and they will argue with you that 1 + 1 isn't 2.
Okay, so let me ask you this. What makes something objective?
In my worldview, God says it, so it is. In your worldview, nothing. Whatever you feel is true is true.
No, I mean, I mean definitionally. Like, what does objective mean?
Again, I just answered that question. You want me to redefine it because you don't like the answer.
No, I'm not. I just want to make sure we're on the same page that we're talking about.
What is objective is what is always eternal. The only thing that's always and eternal is God. In your worldview, without God, you have no always. You have no eternal. It's just what you feel, what you think, your perspective. That's it.
Okay, so I think an issue is that we have very different definitions of the word objective. And when I use the word objective,
wait. That makes my point. The fact that we have different.
Let's let him explain his definition quick.
Thanks. So when I say objective, I mean not subject to human, or not subject to an individual or a collective group's opinion. And with that definition, one would be able to say that something being the same length as something else could be said to be an objective fact. If I said this stick is the same size as this stick, the comparison isn't subject to my interpretation, right? It's true, not based on my opinion. So that's what I mean.
That's a completely different statement, and both things are 12 inches.
Sure. Okay. That's fine. Like the word.
If you take something as basic as that, then yeah, but you have to. You are confined to something as basic as that. You can't. You have no room to wiggle at all.
I don't know what you mean by that, but like I'm willing to.
You can't say everyone believes everything is 12 inches. You can't say that.
That's true. I'm not. You're right. I'm not saying that, and I don't think one would be able to say that. But saying that if there are two objects and they have length, you would be able to objectively. It would be an objective fact whether or not they were the same size. Right? Like that wouldn't change.
I agree with that.
So that fact.
You have a small box of what you can do that with in life.
What do you mean?
You have a very, 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 very limited area where you can make those statements. You can't really base the worldview or anything based on that.
I'm not trying to base a worldview on that.
Okay.
So, you say that God. Okay, so God has a will, right?
Of course.
Okay, and that will exists objectively, independent of our opinion, right?
100%.
And our actions can be compared to that will, correct? Like, if his will is to not murder, then if one does an action, you could say, hey, was that murder? Right? Well, this comparison could be done?
Yes and no.
Do you want to go into the and no part, or can I just accept the yes?
No, I can say yes and no, because you're saying can't murder, but there's points where God says you can murder.
Sure.
So the only level of objectivity is the standard of objective is God. What says God? So once God says you can murder, you can. When God says you can't, you can't. So the standard is only God. It's not the words at the moment. It's only what God says.
Okay, so I'm going to define standard, and I want to see if you agree.
Okay.
A standard is something you use as a base comparison, right? It's what you are comparing, whatever you're evaluating, and if it satisfies the requirements of that thing you're comparing it to, then like that's what standard means. Standard is what you're comparing your object to. So if I were to say, if I were to try to draw a perfect circle on paper, my standard would be an actual mathematical perfect circle, and you would compare whatever shape I draw to that standard, right? So that's what I think you mean when you say standard. It's something that you compare an action to determine whether or not it, satisfies whatever you're dealing with.
Well, no, God is way more complex than that. So
I just want to make sure I know what you mean by standard, because you said God is the standard multiple times. So if you don't accept my definition of standard, can you maybe clarify what you meant by saying God is the standard?
Well, yeah, basically, whatever objective is, the only thing that is objective is what God tells you. That's it.
So I didn't hear a definition for standard there.
That is the definition. Whatever God tells you, that's it.
Okay, so
What you're looking for is wiggle room to adjust and to critique what God says, but that's not how it works. Since you don't understand how God works,
no, I'm
that's
not trying to critique. Sorry, are we done?
no. Go ahead. It's fine.
I wasn't trying to critique at all what God said. Like this isn't. I'm not trying to make.
No, what I'm saying is if I give you your definition of standard, you could critique what God says, but it wouldn't be true. But then I would be pegged down to agreeing with you on your definition of standard, and it would seem like you were right, but you weren't. So that's why I'm not agreeing to your definition of standard, because that's not what applies to God.
So when you say standard, you mean I'm still not hearing a definition of standard. What you say, God is the standard. To me, that means God's will is what you're comparing your action to. And if it's consistent with God's will, then your action is moral. And if it's inconsistent, then you're immoral. Like, is that not really what you mean by standard?
Well, yeah, you can take it there, but you can also convolute it the same way. But yeah, that's the basis of it. But you have to be walked through it because you can convolute that statement in itself.
Okay, if you feel like I'm convoluting it, just let me know. But I feel like we agree right now on what the word standard means. So the comparison of an action to God's will, since God will objectively exists, again, this is tentative, but I'll accept it. God's will objectively exists, and you can compare it to this objective. You can compare an action to his objective will. So it's like, if God's will is for you not to do X action, I won't put murder into it because you objected to that. God's will is to not do X in Y situation, and if one does X in Y situation, then that action is considered immoral, right?
Yeah, correct.
Okay, so the objective aspect of it, the thing that makes that system objective, is the fact that his will is objective, right? His will is unchanging. It's just a fact of reality, right?
Well, no, that's where you're falling off. I knew you were gonna do that. That's what I was saying. That's not how it works. God's will is changing. God can change his will. When you say it's unchanging, you're trying to tie it down to a position, and that's not how God works.
Okay.
God changed from the Old Testament to the New Testament.
Okay.
God does change. His will does change. So to say his will doesn't change is completely false.
Okay. So if I were to say, okay, so I didn't mean to misrepresent your position if you felt like I did that. Okay. What about this comparing an action to the standard that is God? What aspect of it is objective? What makes it objective to you?
What makes it objective is God is the creator of all things. He understands all things, and what he tells you is right. So anything outside of that is wrong. So objectively, the only way you can be objective is by just submitting to his will and doing what he says. Anything outside of that is subjective.
So
if we're all required to listen to let's say we're all required to listen to the government, and the government says you can't kill anybody, period, full stop. Your interpretation of that doesn't matter. If you killed somebody, you're wrong, and they have objective truth, because it's true that if you kill somebody, it's wrong. But if that same government came back a little bit later and changed it and says, no, murder isn't wrong, now it's still it's still, the government is still objectively correct that, hey, now murder isn't wrong. They're still the authority of what objective is in that situation.
Well, I'd agree with you, but maybe in a way that you wouldn't like.
No, it's fine. Go ahead. It's not that serious. Go ahead.
No, I know. When, let's say a government were to say you can't wear hats.
Yeah.
It would be, and then somebody wore a hat.
Yeah.
it would be wrong of them to wear a hat, but
Yeah.
only if by using the word wrong, you mean not consistent with the government,
Okay.
right?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, and then and that could be that's objectively true. If you wear a hat, it's objectively true that you are wrong in the sense that you are not consistent with the government. Like that's just
Yeah, so you can boil it down even further. You're objectively wrong if you don't do what the government says. It's the same thing.
Well,
You're
what do you
objectively
mean by
wrong
wrong?
if you-
What do you mean by wrong there? Because when I said the word wrong in this context, I meant not consistent with the government. And now you're using wrong in a different way. So what do you mean?
That's what it's still not consistent with God or not consistent with the government. It's the same thing.
Sorry, what's the same thing?
When I'm saying that if you don't follow the laws that the government gives you, it's the same thing.
Same thing as what?
It's the same thing as not following the laws that God gives you.
Yeah. Okay. So it sounds like we're on the same page in that you can say something is objectively right if what you mean by right is a comparison that is objective and satisfied. So like you're objectively right when you don't wear a hat when the government says you can't wear a hat because right means consistent with the government. And just like with God, if God says X action is moral and you do X action, then you are right in that you are consistent with what God says, if that's what you mean by right.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So that's how I believe you can view secular morality, in that when I say Hitler was wrong, by wrong, I specifically mean inconsistent with achieving maximal human well-being. That's what I mean when I say the word wrong.
Yeah, so again, you keep forgetting that you're representing all of humanity. You're not representing just you.
I'm not representing anything except my own views.
You're representing all of secular views, right?
No.
Wait a minute. What?
I'm saying one can view the system of secular morality that I'm talking about as equally objective as theistic morality. So I'm not.
No, but the people that were involved with Hitler were a part of secular reality.
Would it or wouldn't it be objectively true that what Hitler did was contrary to human well-being?
Not to them.
So you're saying to them it's better to human well-being to kill and torture humans?
Yes, that's why they did it.
Okay,
Wait, you thought they were doing something they didn't believe in?
It's not about believing it. They definitely believed that what they were doing was correct. But,
okay, that's the point.
But I think it's objectively false that what they were doing was beneficial to human well-being.
And they disagree with you.
Okay, I can prove I can prove them wrong.
You can't, because they're objective.
Hold on.
Again,
well, let's just let him. Yeah, I think he was still going.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's okay.
That's not objective.
Let me go to something a little bit more basic than Hitler.
Wait, let's stop.
Well,
you think Hitler's wrong?
Hold on. We originally. Well, hold on. I'm sorry to interrupt, but it was originally. I think he was making a point, and then I think you thought he was done, and then you started to talk, and then when we put the ball back in his court, I think he was trying to regather his thoughts. So let's just give him a chance to come back, and we'll of course give you a chance to come back too.
Very good.
Okay, so I think when evaluating, so human well-being is a combination of, people's freedoms, their happiness, their healthiness, things like that. That's what we're talking about with human well-being. And one's well-being or society's well-being or the humanity's well-being is an objective fact. Like although it's hard to tell when well-being is increasing or when it's decreasing, there are we can make objective comparisons between a system of people that is not doing well with regard to well-being and a people that is doing well. Like we can objectively say that if everyone on the planet were burning alive, that would be contrary to human well-being, right?
Are there people in the world that would disagree with you?
Yes.
That's not objective. That's subjective.
So you're saying it's subjective. It's up to somebody's opinion when they're evaluating whether or not being burned alive is negative on somebody's health.
Wait, weren't you just giving your opinion?
No, I'm describing.
No, I understand. This is a question. Weren't you just giving your opinion?
Everything I'm saying are thoughts that I have.
Which is also known as an opinion, right?
So that's only if you would say that when I compare two sticks and I say they're the same length.
See, you did it
my
again. That's
opinion.
not the same thing.
I see it as exactly the same.
That's the problem.
So show me where I'm incorrect.
Someone else, a person somewhere else will completely disagree with you. They can't disagree with you that the stick is exactly the same length, but they can disagree with you about your perspective on life.
See, I'm not talking.
Your perspective of saying that people burning alive is wrong. There are people that believe
I didn't say
that's fine.
I didn't say that. I explicitly didn't say people being burned alive is wrong. I was trying to see whether or not you would agree with me that everyone on the planet being burned alive is contrary to their well-being. Would you say that that is an objective fact? I'm not saying right or wrong yet.
There are people that would disagree with you.
Okay. Are they objectively wrong? Like incorrect? Are they objectively incorrect in their evaluation of
based on secular morality? No.
I think let's just let him finish. I think were you done with
that
your
was
question?
That was a question for me.
I wasn't sure if he was done though. I just wanted.
I was done. It's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a question.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Yeah, basically, based on secular morality, no. Your secular morality is whatever you decide. There are people that kill themselves and want to kill themselves. Okay. There are people that think they're right for killing themselves. There are people that want to destroy the whole world. They think that's fine. Objective, based on a secular moral view.
See, I'm not talking about
no objective.
I'm not talking about fine or morally right or wrong yet. All I'm talking about is a comparison between a desired outcome, i.e. maximal human well-being, and a current state of affairs, that being, in this scenario, people being burned alive. Is it objectively true? Is it a fact of reality that those people don't have maximal human well-being?
From their perspective, no.
So what opinion, what is up to what is up to somebody's opinion with regard to comparing human suffering to human
in secular reality, everything is up to your opinion. You have no standard.
I'm not talking about secular reality.
What this is secular versus
morality, secular morality versus theistic morality.
Yeah, secular morality. I'm talking about secular morality. There is no standard for secular morality.
When you say there is no standard, I just described a standard. So no objective standard. You explained a subjective standard. Human well-being. Sorry, were you done?
Yeah, I don't care about you cutting me off. Go ahead.
So
I'm fine with it.
Human well-being is an objective fact of reality.
That's your opinion. That's subjective.
A stick.
I think he's still going. Hold on.
A stick having a certain length is an objective fact of reality. Would you accept that?
That's the only thing that you've said so far that's an objective reality.
So a stick having a certain length is an objective fact.
Yes.
I just really want to.
That's the only one you have so far.
Humans can be healthy, right?
There's people that disagree with you.
Sorry. Do you think it's an objective fact that people can be healthy?
It doesn't matter what I think.
I'm asking you a question. I'm asking you what you think. It matters to me because I asked.
Yeah, based on God, yeah, of course. My thinking is based on God.
What do you mean based on God? Like, I still don't think that's clear. And then we
When
start getting
you're a
into
Christian, when
epistemology.
you're a Christian, everything that you do, everything that you are, is based on God. Your
What do you
every
mean based?
thought, your every want, your every understanding of life is based on God.
What do you mean based on?
What do you mean? I don't understand how you don't understand what based on means.
I don't understand what based on means. Like, if
Okay,
I
so
say my favorite song is
every
My
time you make
Cat,
every time you make a decision, you have to check with God before you make that decision to see if that decision is worth having or make worth doing.
okay, so
That's
I'm not
what
talking
that's
about
what
decision.
dying that's what dying of self is letting go of everything of who you are and letting God lead everything that you are. Because when you lead yourself, you do what you're doing now. You you think that what you're saying is objective, but it isn't. It's subjective.
Well,
Other people think differently.
so you were specifically talking about action, and I'm not talking about action. So when you said
You
based on
are. You just
action,
listen. You are. You're just trying to play
Uh,
word games
uh,
to
no,
make
I'm
it
not
I,
make
sure.
sense to you.
I'm not sure if he was done. If we could just give Joseph a chance.
yeah, and I want to make clear, we spoke just really briefly about this, but I'm not trying to play word games. All I'm trying to do is to make sure that we agree on the definition of things. So this
Yeah,
is a word game.
just because you don't understand you're doing something doesn't mean that you're not doing it. People do things all the time that they don't actually understand that you're doing what they're doing. What you're actually doing is you're playing word games so that you can get away from the actual reality that everything that you're saying is subjective.
Well, I don't see it as word games. I feel like I tried defining something and nailing something down, and then you just say no because it's a secular worldview and everything you're saying is subjective.
Yes, because can other people define words differently than you?
Okay. Does being
No,
able
answer my question.
Yes,
Can
yes,
other
yes.
people define things differently than you?
Sorry, yes. People
So
can.
just based on that alone, it's not objective, it's subjective.
Okay, so to be clear, you're saying that because somebody can define a word differently, that would make something subjective.
Of course.
Okay, so if I were to say a ruler is 12 inches, is that or okay, no, if
I
I were
already
to say,
told you that's subjective.
okay, if I were to say if I were to say X object is Y size, would that be an objective fact?
No, that's subjective.
Is it okay? I think we just completely disagree on what the word objective means, and we're talking past each other.
Yeah, because you don't you think your worldview you think the way you think matters, but there's people in the other parts of the world
What do you
that
mean
don't
matters?
think what you think matters.
What do you mean matters? Because I didn't say anything about matters.
There, now you're back to the word games.
It's not word games. I don't know. I feel like maybe jumping to a conclusion that I'm
Okay,
not.
okay. Let's do this. Are there people in the other part of the world that don't believe that have different size metrics?
Yes.
So if you told them this is this size metric, they would disagree with you, right?
You'd have to be more specific.
If you said something was 12 inches and they
Yeah.
didn't believe in inches, would they disagree with you?
They would say, "Wait, what do you mean by inches?" And you'd show them like the different
No,
sizes, and then you'd say, "Yeah."
that's not what actually happens in real life. In real life, when you're not playing word games, in real life, when you tell somebody something they've never heard before, they just disagree with you. They don't
I
have
don't
you
think-
walk them through it.
I don't think if I came up to somebody that didn't speak English at all and they knew
No,
everything in English,
They can speak English,
hold on.
but still have a
Hold-
different perspective.
Let's hear the response from Joseph too.
okay, if I were to go to somebody who just had never heard the word inches, a child whose parents just raised them wrong on purpose.
But see, that's what why did
Hold
you
on,
say,
hold
why
on.
did you say
No,
Let's
wrong?
we have to let him finish though. Hold on a sec. Ramon.
I'm just saying somebody who doesn't know what the word inch means. If you were to go up to them and say, "Hey, this ruler is 12 inches," they wouldn't say no. They don't even know what you're talking about yet. Who would say no? Unless they're just being rude on purpose. They would say, "What does 12 inches mean?" And you say, "Well, an inch is about this size. That's what I mean. When I say the word inch, I mean something is that size. This is 12 of them." They'd agree with you unless they were being irrational.
Again, your entire statement was subjective. Even when you tried to explain it, you admitted that you thought the parents raised them wrong.
No,
That's a subjective view.
that was just an example.
All you did was you made a mistake and allowed your subjective view to show when you said the parents raised them wrong.
All I meant by
All you've
raised
been
them
trying
wrong-
to do so
Hold
far
on.
is hide your subjective view in cute wording. That's really all you're doing. You're giving your worldview, which is subjective, onto other people who wouldn't agree with you. That's why you said, we have it on the audio recorded, that they raised their kid wrong.
Okay.
Not
Okay.
Let me clarify. Let me
Okay,
clarify.
Ramon. Okay, Ramon. We got to give. To be fair to Joseph, we got to give him like a good 60 seconds or so just to kind of lay out his case. Okay.
So all
Yeah,
I
don't wait,
all
hold
I
on.
meant-
You keep interrupting me, but when he interrupts me,
No, I
it's not a problem. No, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about the host.
I don't know if he's.
You've interrupted me at least 10 times.
Well,
and wait, and when he interrupts me, I allow him to interrupt me, and you don't say anything.
So I
That's your
don't
limit.
really think that Joseph's interrupted you, and if I'm wrong about that, I'm sorry. I
Yes,
could
he's
be.
interrupted me several times, but I flow with a real conversation, and I allowed that to happen. But you just keep interrupting me and stopping the conversation.
Okay, so I mean, even granting if Joseph did do it several times, from my perspective, I could be wrong about this, but it seemed that you've done it more by a significant margin. That's the only reason
But
why.
if I've done it more and you haven't interrupted him at all,
Right,
what's the problem there?
because there's a little bit of grace, with the first several, but like after if it's too continual, it's kind of like, okay, well, hold on, like we don't have.
Have you ever had an open dialogue?
Yeah, of course.
Have you been interrupted in an open dialogue?
No, because I don't cut people off usually.
I didn't say have you interrupted someone in an open dialogue. I said have you been interrupted in an open dialogue?
Have I been interrupted? I don't know. Like I'm trying to think of my open dialogues. I just had one the other night. Pretty minimally. It was with Cirrus and Ocean, and I think they were, I think they let me talk plenty. I don't feel like they really cut me off. Like,
Have you ever been interrupted in an open dialogue?
I'm sure it's happened at one point, but
Okay, so that's how open dialogues work. People interrupt people all the time in open dialogues.
right.
The only person that I have a problem with interrupting me right now isn't him, it's you.
Okay. Well, my thought is just that I could be wrong about this. I'll be careful to make sure that I'm being fair. But it just looked
Yeah,
like.
it just would be better if you just didn't interrupt and you allowed us to have an open conversation.
Okay. Like I said, if I can. So what I was saying is, I'm only going to interrupt if it looks like it's disproportionately higher on one side that somebody is cutting in, and so it's
All right.
that's what it seemed like to me. I could be wrong.
How many? Let me ask you a question. How many African American men have you had on here?
I don't know, but
No,
if you-
guess.
Let's see. Edward Earl has been a debater on here. I think he's African American, and we never had this problem. So if
I
you're
said
trying,
no. So you've
hold
had
on a
one.
second.
Wait,
Listen,
wait.
no. Listen, I'm
You've
going to
had
cut you
one
off
out of
now.
how
No.
many?
Like, listen.
Wait,
if
now
you're
you
gonna,
just said
like,
you've
no,
never
no.
interrupted anybody. Now we caught you in the
Listen.
lie.
Wait, what? I never said that I never interrupted somebody.
No, you did say that. That was the
no,
first
I
statement.
said I don't typically do it. Like,
No, you said you haven't interrupted anyone, and now you've done it right now.
Okay, my thought is Edward Earl and we got along fine. Like he didn't interrupt anybody, and so if you're trying to
Okay, so
hold on,
how
let
many-
me finish. Let me finish.
Go ahead.
So, if you're trying to allude to the idea that this is because of your race, that's
How
preposterous.
many
Hold
how
on a
many-
second.
wait,
You're not
answer
going to
my
respond
question.
to me, are you?
I am. How
Listen,
many
you can
non-black
return-
people have you had on here?
How many non-black people?
Yeah.
I don't know. If you're trying to
Wait,
insinuate,
stop,
if you're,
stop.
If you're trying to
So
insinuate,
how do
this
you
is a-
wait?
Listen,
So how do
like-
you wait?
No. Listen,
How do you know
can-
how
you guys-
African
you
Americans
guys
have
can-
conversations?
You guys can keep debating and
No.
that's
Answer
okay.
my question. How do you know
Listen,
how African Americans have conversations?
I'm not going to get into this with you. I've been fine with you. Okay, you've been disproportionately cutting off Joseph.
Yes, because you never talked to an African American, so you don't understand how we communicate. So you're overly proportionally getting involved in a normal conversation that another culture has. So you don't understand how African Americans talk. So that's why you think it's weird when this is actually normal.
I am simply doing it because it seemed disproportionately high. I've admitted I've done it before. I don't typically do it.
You think it's disproportionately high because of your own cultural bias. You don't understand that this is normal.
I don't think it's fair for you to say to generalize that all black people do it as much as you, because you don't have any. Hold on, let me finish. Let me finish. You don't have any empirical data for that. So frankly, I've had another gentleman on who's African American. He was a friendly guy. We didn't have
you
this
just
kind of,
named one
we didn't
black
have any
person.
Sort of, we
wait. You're saying that you understand black people because you had one black person on.
No,
I'm an actual black person that's telling you how black people operate, and you're like, no, that's not true because I had one black guy on before.
This is insane. If you want to keep talking with Joseph, and
I can if you will stop interrupting. Will you do that?
Well, if you don't do it disproportionately more than Joseph.
You don't know what disproportionate is because you don't know black culture.
Not all black people interrupt.
How many black people have you listened to talk?
Oh gosh. Okay. So you can continue talking.
Exactly.
With Joseph.
That's why you changed the subject, because you know that I'm telling the truth. You're speaking from your worldview. You don't know how African Americans speak. That's why normally white people say that black people are being angry black men, is because we speak more aggressively than you do because you don't understand our culture. So you're interrupting a normal conversation for an African American, but because you don't get it, because it's not your worldview, because it's not your culture, you're the one being disrespectful to me. In my worldview, you interrupting over and over and over again. You've interrupted the black guy 10 times, the white guy never, and you don't see anything wrong with that.
Well, I think that it was because your behavior was different from his. You were cutting him off more.
Yes, because I'm black.
Okay, that's
how behaviors work in different cultures.
Just because you're black doesn't mean you can cut people off more. Okay, like it doesn't work blind.
No,
like,
what I'm telling you is that I'm telling you that our norm and your norm are completely different.
And that's okay.
You don't understand.
That's okay. But at this channel, we just want to let people have roughly the same amount of time to get their case out. And so
again, like I said, either you're going to stop interrupting me or we can just end it, because you're being disrespectful. We're having a fine conversation. He's never said anything about anything, and when he wanted me to stop, I stopped. You've been the only problem in this conversation.
Yeah, I don't think so. You're wrong. So people are asking me to end the debate.
I'm fine with ending the debate if you're not going to stop interrupting.
Well, hold on. I already mentioned, regardless of race, I would do it to anybody if they're white.
It's not regardless of race. You don't understand race.
Okay, sure.
You haven't been in this position before, so you don't know if it's regardless of race. You're guessing right now.
Oh, well, you were the one that told me though that black people interrupt more. So
yes, we do. We have conversations like this. Is normal. Okay. This is normal dialogue for an African American, but you don't know that because you're not African American. So when you brought me on and said that we were going to have an open dialogue, that's an open dialogue to an African American. But you don't know what you actually agreed to because you don't know African American people.
This just doesn't look like it's going in a very productive direction. So
I just said you can end it or you can stop interrupting. Either one is fine with me.
Well, like I'm okay with not interrupting as much if you don't interrupt your opponent.
No, I
much.
want you to stay out of it. And if he has a problem
this is my channel. If you don't like it, you can go somewhere else.
Yeah, that's fine. Have a nice day.
Real quick.
Go ahead.
I like how much you, James, are letting me talk. And I'd appreciate it if the debate would continue, if it continues at all, if Pastor Wilson was cut off at the same rate that he was being cut off before.
What does that mean?
What I mean is I think James was doing a great job moderating, and there were certain times where you were going on for just a bit too long where I hadn't made my
point. If you have a problem with that, speak up and I'll stop. That's it. Say, oh wait, I'm not done, and I will let you continue.
I mean, I was trying a little, but I didn't
Yeah, no, that's the difference. Different cultures. In African American culture, you speak up. You speak up and I'll just stop. That's it. You say, "Oh no, I'm not done speaking," and I will stop talking and I will let you finish. That's the difference between cultures. African Americans are more aggressive. You guys are a little more passive. So when you're saying the norm for us and the norm for you, it's completely different because you
So,
don't understand our norm.
so your
So
norm takes precedent in this discussion?
no, it doesn't. I'm just telling you I'm telling you why it's going on that way. And if you want to have a solution,
Then we
just
gotta
say, hold on, I'm not finished speaking, and I'll let you continue.
So I'd rather it follow what you call the white norm. Not that I agree that that is a white versus black thing, but I would like this discussion to go in a way that I get to speak without needing to yell over you.
So
that-
you can't. So if James wasn't here, you wouldn't be able to interject and still make your point without having a chaperone.
I think a conversation flows a lot better. And
No, answer my question. Without a chaperone, you wouldn't be able to have a normal conversation.
Depends what you mean by normal.
Okay.
It wouldn't be as good of one.
Yeah. Okay. All right, man. Whatever. If you can't handle manning up and interjecting for yourself, that's your own problem, man.
I guess it is. Yeah.
So this is I do think he was trying to kind of continue speaking, but I think that it is like kind of the audience has been kind of saying like, hey James, like from the very start. I think Tiffany mentioned like, hey, and someone else too, like very early mentioned like, James, you got to step in as the moderator, and so I've tried to do that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. How much of your audience is white?
Is that I don't think that there is. If you're trying to insinuate my audience is
guess
race,
how much of your okay, let's do it the other way.
You're not.
Guess how much of your audience is black?
Based on their avatar, 0%. I can
Okay.
tell.
No, in real life, guess how much of your audience is black? Guess.
I have no. I don't know the demographics. YouTube
If you had
doesn't
to
give me
guess,
that.
well, how much of your audience would be black?
Listen, I'm not going to play your game.
Exactly, because you don't want to paint the reality that's there. Most of your audience is white.
Okay.
So they're speaking from your same worldview.
Okay.
Because you're white.
They're all black. I'm black too, actually.
What'd you say?
Nothing.
Wait, what? Yeah, I know you're not black, so that was a terrible
Just
joke.
divisive.
Yeah.
So with that, we can go back to the discussion. I know that Joseph mentioned that he'd enjoy continuing with the discussion. And so I'm okay with it if you are both on the same page in terms of like trying to let each other have equal time in speaking. Like that's okay. That sounds fair, right? And so if you guys are okay with that and you guys want to keep going, I'm open to it. I don't like really take things personally, so we can keep going.
Wait, the guy named Coon is saying I'm black. That's showing you your channel was full of white people. Okay, keep going, man. This is hilarious. The guy with the racial slur is saying I'm black. Get out of here, man. Keep going.
I don't know if what Coon is referring to.
Yeah, because you're not black. It's a racial slur, but you don't get that the same way you don't get this is normal conversation, but for black people. That's the point. You just made my point.
I don't know.
You don't know that your members are blatantly putting out racial slurs to black people. You thought it was fine because you don't get it. You're making my point.
So I don't know if Coon necessarily has to be a racist slur because Coon is actually an Irish last name. So like, he also has a white person's avatar. Now I think he's trolling since he has a white person's avatar. I think that he's just trolling when he says he's black. I don't know why he's doing that. But it could be that he's just Irish and that's his last name. Because I know my first YouTube channel, it had my last name in it, Coons. So
is Coon and Coons the same word?
No, I'm only saying that sometimes people use their last name in their YouTube name. His Coon, C-O-O-N, is an Irish last name according to Ancestry.com. So I'm just saying.
Oh, wait. So the first thing you said was you didn't understand that it was racist in the first place.
No. I said I don't know. Hold on.
And then you went to explain the racism away.
No. I said I don't know if it actually means that like a racial slur. So, but
oh my goodness, this is hilarious.
So
You just made my point, though. Thank you.
actually, HistoryNet says that he knows him and that he actually is black. So
Oh, okay. Yeah, we trust everything the internet tells you. You're right. You're right.
this
You're on the internet and you're telling us stuff.
Oh man.
So what we will do is, I think that this just doesn't like. It doesn't seem like we're going to be able to get to the actual conversation because every time I ask for like equal time, I get
Yeah,
pushed back.
I've already agreed to that. You're
so-
only stuck on the fact of me telling you that you're being a white person not understanding black people, so you're stuck on that. But it's fine, man. I already said we can keep going or we can end it. It's fine.
I mean, I personally didn't hear you agree to equal time.
There's no such thing as equal time in an open dialogue. That doesn't exist.
But you just said you agreed to it.
Yeah, but that's not what I meant because there's no
Okay.
such thing. It's not possible to get equal time in an open dialogue.
Well,
Because
roughly equal.
if you make a 30-second statement, you don't realize in the Christian's perspective, you've made 10 different points, and every single point I have to address. Just because you think you're making one point doesn't mean that you're making one point. So when I stop you, I'm stopping you to understand that each point you've already made. So in that 30 seconds, you made 10 or more points that you're not even aware of.
So we are just going to. I'm going to have to find a new person for Condor Man because it just seems like you wanted
Yeah,
to.
you need to find a whiter person that you're more comfortable with.
No,
That's fine.
we could have a black person who doesn't interrupt as much. Like that'd be
Oh,
fine with
okay.
me.
So you need a whiter black person. That's fine.
So
Have a nice day, man. It's fine.
we basically. It seems like you just want to argue with me. You don't want to agree that you'll give roughly equal time. So it doesn't have to be exactly equal, but roughly equal time, and let people make their points. So if you're like,
I've already agreed to that.
okay, so we can give this another shot if Condor Man still feels up to it. But like, we'll start right now if that is something Condor Man. If you're willing to give it another shot.
It's tough since it's been derailed a bit. It's hard to know where we left off. I know that
Yeah.
a point that the straw that broke the camel's back was me not able to make clear that when I said that people raise their kid wrong, what I meant was just a silly example of somebody specifically raising their kid to know English fluently but not know the word inches. So I wasn't making a moral claim at all. So I don't know if you remember like where the chain of discussion was going right from that point, or if we need to just start fresh. It's hard for me to tell.
So he just made a full point. Do I get to respond to that, or you want me to just let him keep going?
You can respond to that.
So again, that's the problem with atheists, is that you guys play word hopscotch and lie to yourself. You are making a moral point when you said they're teaching their kid wrong. There's no way around that.
What do you mean by moral point? What do you mean by moral? Okay. Let me make this question.
You keep trying to play atheist hopscotch. You guys try to jump out of words because you don't like that you're wrong.
Let me make this question perfectly clear. When you say X action is immoral, then you're saying, immoral, you're saying it's inconsistent with God's nature. Right?
When I say it, yeah.
Yeah, when you say it, sure. What is it about raising a child that makes the question, or what are you evaluating to be consistent with God's nature? So like, if I were to toss an apple in the air and catch it into my hand, what about that scenario, is that example I just gave, would you evaluate? What aspect of that would make it a moral question? Or is it always a moral question?
It's always a moral question.
Okay, so every question you ask, like, hey, why'd you throw that apple? That's a moral question.
Absolutely.
So every question, what time is it? Moral question?
Moral question.
So morality is what makes something moral? Like, what is it about me tossing an apple that makes it that you're evaluating to be consistent or inconsistent with God's nature?
Because when you're a Christian, you can't even toss the apple without God telling you to toss the apple.
You can't toss the apple without God telling you to toss the apple. So anything you do, God necessarily tells you to do?
Yes, that's what I've been telling you.
So if you rape a whole bunch of babies, necessarily God told you to do that?
Yeah, if God told you to do that, but that's...
No, I'm not saying if.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
You specifically said, if I toss an apple, necessarily God had to have told me to do that, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, and if I raped a whole bunch of babies, and people do this, right? Then God necessarily had to tell them to rape those babies, right?
Well, not the God that I represent. God wouldn't tell you to rape babies.
Do people rape babies?
That has nothing to do with God.
Answer the question. Do people rape babies?
Yes, corrupt people.
Yes. Do people toss apples?
Yes.
Does God tell people to toss apples that toss apples?
Yes, real Christians, yes.
Does God... Wait. So only real Christians
get told to do that? I'm speaking from a Christian worldview. I don't get what you're getting.
But every human exists in your Christian worldview. That's a worldview, right? It's the whole world. Everything in the world. Yeah. So in your Christian worldview, every action...
Christian worldview, if you're not connected with God, God isn't telling you what to do. So everything you do is wrong.
Wait. Can you repeat that?
In my Christian worldview, if you're not following God the right way, then God isn't telling you what to do. So everything you do after that point is wrong. Is morally wrong. Okay,
so this is contradicting your statement that if I toss an apple up and down, it's necessarily consistent with God's will.
No, if a Christian does it, it is necessarily.
Okay, but if somebody that didn't believe that God existed, in your worldview, tossing an apple wasn't necessarily being compared to God's world, to God's will, right? Or God's not telling them to do that.
Yeah, it's immoral, yeah.
Wait, sorry, it is moral or it is immoral?
It's immoral.
It is immoral to toss an apple when you don't believe in God.
Yes. Anything you do outside of God is immoral.
Okay. So what do you mean outside of God?
If you're not following God the right way and he's not leading every step of your life, anything you do outside of that is immoral.
Okay, so I don't believe that a God exists. If I blink, that was an immoral action, right?
Yes.
Okay. Why should anyone care what morality is, if that's what moral means? Just any action done by somebody who doesn't believe in God.
Yeah, the reason they care is because you're going to hell if you don't.
Okay, but why should I care about going to hell? Doesn't that I should only care if it affects my well-being?
How does going to hell not affect your well-being?
I'm saying it does, right? Going to hell does affect your well-being, but that's not what we're basing morality on. So why should, based on your worldview, so why should I care about my well-being?
What do you mean?
Why should I don't really know how to be more clear. Why should I care? Why should I act in a way that's consistent with my well-being?
If you're not following God, you shouldn't, and you don't.
What do you mean? Why?
You don't have a reason to.
Wait. You said one should follow what God says.
Yes.
What?
But if you're a person that isn't, you're not worried about your well-being because you're not following God. So everything.
So I am worried about my well-being, right? I don't believe a God exists, but I'm still worried about my well-being.
So are you?
Let me ask, why are you worried about? No, so I'm trying to say, why should anyone care about morality if morality just means any action not done without being a Christian?
Because.
Or any action.
Well, no, secular morality they shouldn't care about. I'm not telling you they should care about.
Why shouldn't they care about it in secular morality?
Because it's irrelevant. No matter what you do in secular morality, you're wrong.
We're not talking about secular morality. We're talking about your moral system right now.
Okay, even based on my moral system.
Yeah.
based on my moral system, if you have two options, you either follow God or you don't.
Yeah.
So based on my moral system, if you're choosing not to follow God, you're choosing not to be moral, so you don't care about being moral in the first place.
Sure. Only if we agree that any action that a non-theist does is necessarily immoral, regardless of its consequences on the real world. Just by the fact that they don't believe in God, their actions are all immoral, right? So we already said that. You already agree with that.
Yes, that's why. Wait. That's why he told him not to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil.
Sure.
It's strictly telling you not to make your own decisions. That's the only thing he told us not to do.
Okay, so making your own decisions is what's immoral about it.
That's any decision outside of God is immoral, even blinking.
Okay, so by outside of God you mean not decided by God.
Of
so
course.
If I blink and God didn't decide that, then that is immoral.
Yeah, blink is a terrible example, but yeah.
No, why is it?
I'm trying to go with your analogy, but
okay, fine.
Terrible example.
Sure. You accept it. Okay, so again, why should anyone care about God's decision?
If in my worldview, if you're choosing not to follow God, you don't care about morality. You've already made that decision.
Can you answer my question?
Oh, again, it's hell, heaven or hell. That's it.
So why should? So that's your. So one should base their action on whether or not they go to hell.
Yes.
Is going to hell contrary to your well-being?
What?
Is going to hell contrary to well-being? Is it bad? Is it bad for your well-being?
Contrary to mine, yeah. Of course.
Anyone's. Right?
Based on their perspective or my perspective?
Yours.
Yeah, based on my perspective, of course.
Okay.
On theirs, no. There's people that talk themselves into wanting to go to hell.
But when they go to hell, is it objectively true that it is contrary to their well-being, that it is bad for their well-being? Like, regardless of what they think, it doesn't matter what they think, it's bad for their well-being, right?
Yeah, at that point, yes, it's objectively true, yeah.
Okay, so it seems like you're saying that people should make decisions based on how the repercussions affect their well-being, right?
Course.
Like, don't do this action. So that's secular. That's inherently secular. That has nothing to do with God. God is just a part of the world.
No, it's not. God is outside of the world.
Well, what I mean is he's part of reality that determines the repercussions, but the actual thing that you're comparing your action to is whether or not it will result in harming your well-being. Right? Like that's why people should act certain ways, because it is bad for their well-being. Right?
Yeah, what's your point?
That's what I hold, and I think this fact
you don't actually hold that.
No, I do. This fact is objectively true regardless of God's existence.
Yeah, again, that's not true.
People...
That's subjective.
If you say what I just said is subjective, then what you just said is equally subjective. Like, I'm not going to say that morality is objective or morality is subjective. Like, I really don't care. All I care about is whether or not the two systems are equally objective. And what you just described...
No, they're not.
Okay, so what you just described is a system where people compare their actions to avoiding... I don't know if compare is the right word, but they act according to the consequences to their well-being. Like that's in summary why people should act particular ways.
Yeah, but the part you're doing word tricks around is, in secular world you don't know what your well-being is in the afterlife. In the Christian worldview you do. Okay,
that's definitely a fact that an atheist, if there was an afterlife and acting a certain way got them to hell, then they wouldn't, their well-being would be negatively affected if they acted in a way that reflected their ignorance.
Yeah, that's the point.
Okay, but it's still their actions are still being, whether or not their actions are right or wrong, are still being compared to the consequences. Being ignorant of the consequences doesn't really change it. It's kind of like,
No, that's not true.
well, think about it like this: if you're playing chess, right, and you're trying to win, you can do moves that are objectively better than other moves. But if you didn't know that the whole board was going to be flipped and pieces went flying everywhere before the game ended, that wouldn't change whether or not a piece was. I don't know if this is the best metaphor.
Yeah, that's not true at all. Because you got to take into account that even people that are not following God the right way, there are a few people that haven't been exposed to the truth and haven't gotten the opportunity to learn about God that will still make it to heaven. So you can be objectively ignorant and still make it.
Okay.
That's not even true. That's not a true statement. You're just making a statement based on not knowing. That's not true at all.
Can you repeat to me what my statement was, just so I can make?
No, you can repeat it yourself.
Well, I'm actually not clear. I was kind of getting distracted by my analogy. So if you can tell me what specifically I said was wrong, like what my statement was, then I know that you're not just
you were saying that
strawmanning.
you were basically saying that you could, if you don't understand the consequences, if you're ignorant of the consequences, then it doesn't matter. It does.
What doesn't matter?
If you're ignorant to the consequences of God, you could still make it to heaven.
Wait, what? So you said that I said when you're ignorant of the repercussions, then it doesn't matter. What's the it there? What doesn't matter?
Yeah, you explained.
I didn't say. I didn't.
Back the word
I didn't say that though. You know, like
wait,
I don't know what you mean.
You don't remember what you said, and then you said I didn't say that. You're back to the word trick.
It's because that what you said doesn't make any sense to me. So I know I didn't say that.
Okay, so tell me what you said. Go ahead.
We have a little bit of time left, so sorry to not let you answer, Joseph, but we're probably did fit these questions in for the Q&A. We should probably move into it pretty quick here, if you guys are okay with that.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay, so James Downard asks, good to see you, James. So question for both. So this is from, or for each speaker, is slavery objectively wrong for all times, places, and conditions, or not? And on what basis do you reach that view?
So I guess I'll go first. Slavery in general, like, no. But it can be said that particular instances of slavery were objectively wrong. If by wrong or morally wrong, you mean contrary to maximal human well-being. Like, you could imagine a situation where you had slaves, but it was actually beneficial to human well-being. And in that situation, it would be objectively moral. It's an objective fact that slavery is beneficial to human well-being in that scenario.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I basically agree, just with a different source being God.
You got it. Okay. Thanks for that question, James Downard, and thanks for each of the speakers for responding. So Lucifer Almighty asked is a question, it's self-titled. I'm not calling him Lucifer. So question for the theist. He said, how can he objectively know that his form of Christianity is the correct one over the other forms? And he says you can say this is from Rich, so that, so...
It's too late for that. Go ahead.
Oh, so yeah, so basically, how can that was just the question of how can he objectively know that his form of Christianity is the correct one over the other forms? That's apparently from Rich. You must know him. I don't know him. Well, not personally.
All right. Yeah. So basically, the Bible says you know them by their fruit. So basically, what you're able to do is you're able to test all versions of Christianity and all versions of religion and so on and so forth against what the Bible actually says. And when you do that, you're able to expose the areas that they're wrong. So like people that say that you're just saved by faith and not by works, those people get the Bible completely wrong, because in the same Bible it tells you must pick up your cross and follow after him. You must die of itself. You must bear good fruit. You must forsake father and mother and sister and brother for my sake. There's other passages in James where it tells you that you must that faith without works is dead. The people that tell you that you're not saved by works, they just haven't actually been taught the Bible, and they don't understand that the works that the Bible is talking about is specifically the Jewish customs that the Jews used to follow. So Paul was specifically showing them that you don't, as a Gentile, you don't have to follow their customs. So that's just one example. We're able to line it up piece by piece and show them the errors of their ways. And by the time you're done with the conversation, they understand the error of their ways. The only people that normally have an issue finding the error of their ways are the atheists that are just playing word games. But when you're actually having a real conversation about it, at the end of the conversation, they understand that what they're saying is wrong. But right now, this isn't that case because we're just playing word games. But go ahead.
Gotcha. So next question is from Lucifer Almighty also. So this is a question for the theist. And so Ramon, this is for you. This is, how does one not knowing about 1 + 1 equaling 2 change that it is objective, because 1 + 1 = 2 doesn't change if I've never heard of it? So at least for me, that's a lot to cognitively like get my brain around to fully grasp. If you want me to read it again, either.
No, I get it. There's several ways you can do it. One, they can live in a different culture where 1 isn't 1, and 2 isn't 2. It could be flipped. So it's just based on their basis of their reality and how they do things. So you can go to somebody and say different parts of the world believe you have 7 continents. Some believe you have 6. Some believe you have none. So it's all based on perspective on how you want to interpret the information. We think our information is absolute just because we live in Western society and we think we're in charge of everything, but that's not really true in other cultures.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you very much. And next, we have a question from Bud Askins. And sorry, if anybody has a question for, just so Joseph can get some kind of question Q&A action as well. If you have any questions for Joseph, we will usher them to the front of the line, because sometimes we have more questions for the theist than for our atheist or non-theist. So in the meantime, Bud Askins does have a question. So this is for the theist. He says, Michael, let's see, I don't know. So for Ramon, if Adam and Eve had no conception of right and wrong until they ate of the tree of life, how did they know that what they were doing was wrong?
Yeah, so before I answer that, let me be clear. Every other version of Christianity is corrupt that has been taught over the last 1800 years. So your perspective that you have, anybody in the comment section, your perspective on Christianity that you have is based on corrupt teachings. You just don't realize that you've been indoctrinated with false doctrine. That's why you think that you're saved by works, or that you don't need works, even though the Bible says you do. But all right, can you say the question again really fast?
Yeah, you bet. So this was a question, oh, forgive me, here we go. Bud Askins asked, if Adam and Eve had no conception of right and wrong until they ate of the tree of life, how did they know what they were doing was wrong?
Oh, okay. So they understood, thus said the Lord. So what God wanted you to do at all times was simply listen to him. The reason why he didn't want you eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil is because he didn't want things to be subjective. He didn't want it all to be based on your interpretation or your faulty interpretation. So had they never eaten from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, everything would be based solely on objective truth, which is what God tells you. So God told them not to do it. They understood that he told them not to do it. And you know that they understood because they told each other not to do it, and they still did it.
You got it? Just plugging something in, one sec. Okay, sorry about that. And then just skimming for questions out there for...
Just really quick, Miguel, you can't correct my Christian view while spelling you are wrong. You got to at least be able to do that right.
I actually agree with that.
So anybody, if it's Miguel or anybody else, if you have a question, we could definitely read it for for Joseph, because that way Joseph can get kind of get that thrill of being in the hot seat as well. And in the meantime, do just want to mention, I know that a lot of people have already heard about it, and it's something that I always like getting, if the debaters are okay with me getting their opinion on this. Basically, we have a debate next week that is controversial, to say the least. Basically, next week we will have two gentlemen come on to debate whether or not atheism is a hate cult. And got your question, Zrish Zen. I will definitely ask that. I'm just going to it's nice to get the speaker's opinion on these debates, because it's like your debaters yourselves, the speakers, and so to get your opinion is just interesting. And so any thoughts on that, whether or not this could be a productive, or maybe you are already thinking, no, there's no way this is going to be productive, kind of debate?
You can go first since you haven't said anything.
I'm sorry, was there a question directed at me?
Yeah, so basically, if you have seen I'm not sure if you've maybe seen or heard of it, it's relatively new. Basically, we are going to have Skylar Fiction, kind of a friend of the channel. He's been here before. And we are also going to have Red Pill Religion come on to debate whether or not atheism is a hate cult. And so just want to get your opinion on that, whether or not this could be fruitful, or if this is a terrible idea. And so I'll just quick show, you'll see on your monitor each of the speakers. You'll see in a second, if you've got the YouTube live video going on your own desktop, you can see the poster for it. I just want to hear what your thoughts are, as this is something different than we've ever done.
Yeah, I want to apologize for making you repeat yourself, but
it's okay.
I hate to say, I think, like, I love Skylar Fiction. I don't know if that's his real name. I really enjoy the discussions he has. Red Pill Religion, on the other hand, not that he has a separate view, and that's why I don't like it. I just think it's very hard to have good discussions. Not to hate on him as a person. I think the question is ill-formed. I think a lot of people would agree with me that atheism is simply a statement on a specific claim. Whether you think it's, the belief that there's no God or the lack of belief in God, that doesn't make it a cult. It's not a system. So I think it'll be tough.
Gotcha. Good to know. Yeah, we're gonna try our very, very best to keep it civil. So, but yeah, how about you, Pastor Ramon, if you have an opinion on that?
Yeah, I think it could be a good discussion if the religious person doesn't allow the atheist to get away with the word trick that he just pulled. They redefined it as the Bite model so that they can't be considered a cult, which they are. So they have to completely redefine words to make it something else. So as long as he doesn't allow him to redefine the word and change it to the Bite model, then it's fine. But if he does that, then it's not going to go anywhere.
You got it. It's definitely going to be controversial. I know there's disagreement over the definition of atheism, and so before mentioning the next dialogue, basically we're excited for that, though. I think it's going to be a blast. Skylar, I've enjoyed so far. I haven't had any problems with either Skylar or with Dean, and so my hope is that I think it'll go well. And next, we have a question. So glad that you asked this. Zrish Zen does have a question for Joseph. So thanks for your patience, Joseph. We will go to that question. And so we are asking you this. Can you... oh, no, that wasn't for Joseph. That was for...
Also, James, you can just call me Joe.
Okay, Joe, you betcha. We don't. So it's okay. We don't want to force it. We'll just let it be. Yeah. We have another one, though. This is one thing we're getting excited for, is that you guys have asked for it, so I hope you're excited about this. The viewers have said, hey, should marijuana be legal? So we are very excited that we're going to have a debate next week as well, also with Skylar Fiction. Guy loves to debate. These will be civil discourses in each case, and it's going to be, should weed be legal? So really exciting. I'm excited to get to hear both sides. It'll be a lot of fun, and my hope is that you guys enjoy this, as you guys wanted to have but kind of new topics, and we're going there. So, debaters, any thoughts on this? I'm curious. Maybe you guys don't like these like social political issues, or maybe you do get a kick out of them.
Um, I'm not really familiar with too much of the evidence. I think if somebody makes the case that a society can prosper, yeah, with marijuana being legal, then it should legalize it. Seems to be causing more harm than not for weed to be illegal, for not really any gain.
Pastor Ramon, any thoughts too?
Yeah, so obviously from the Christian worldview, I don't think it's a good thing, but the government isn't based on just Christian worldview. So based on regular everyday society, it's fine if what was it again? Condor said, if it doesn't actually harm society. So if it doesn't have a bunch of negative effects, then I think it'll be okay. But if it does, then maybe not.
You got it. So that's cool. Glad to hear you both of your guys' ideas. And so, if you're new here, by the way, want to say thanks for stopping by. Hit that subscribe button if you want to see more debates in the future. We're glad to have you here. Thank you for your questions. Most of all, though, want to say thank you so much to the debaters. They have done the preparations. They've gotten in the hot seat. And I know we had a little bit of a riff tonight, but for me, water under the bridge. I'm glad to have both of you debaters here. I want to say thank you for both coming on.
Hey, is there any chance I can answer this last question or no?
Let's see if you want. It's like, sure, yeah. I mean, it's up to you.
Yeah, so the guy is saying that the Bible says that we're saved by grace, by faith in grace. What that's telling you, it's not telling you that you don't have to do anything to obtain salvation. It's telling you that you didn't have to do anything for Christ to come and die for you. So if Martin Luther King or people like that did the work for African Americans to be able to vote, that doesn't change the fact that an African American has to register to vote to vote. So you're confusing the grace with the actual need of the works after the grace. The grace just means that you get the opportunity to do it. The works is required so that you can obtain it and use it. Believing itself is a work. Just taking the idea of deciding to believe is a work, period. So if you're saying that you're not saved by works, you can't even believe because that takes work. But all right, that's all. I just wanted to address that.
Yeah, you betcha. It's I totally enjoyed the debaters here tonight in terms of the engagement, and so like I said, a little ruffled, but no problem. It's that's life, and so we're glad to have both of you here. And but yeah, again, so thank you very much for the speakers.
Thanks, James.
Yeah, thank you. No problem.
You bet. I hope you guys have a great night. And for those in the audience, again, thanks for your questions. Keep sifting out the reasonable from the unreasonable.